Today, we're diving into what makes a website actually convert. My guest is Andrew Lay, CEO of Hierographx, a website design and marketing agency in Michigan that helps small businesses and tech startups succeed online. So, we're going to talk about some of the big mistakes business owners make with their websites and what you should fix first if conversions are low, and what is a conversion, and how to balance creative design with clear strategy, which is, I think, one of those mistakes that people make is they design a website, but they don't have a strategy for it. Andrew walks us through how he evaluates a site's design and messaging and what he looks for right away. So if you've ever wondered why your site isn't pulling its weight or what separates good looking from high converting, this episode is for you. So let's jump in. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your host, lead machine coach, and the founder of the Lead Machine Marketing Group and Mastermind. And I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream life. And so whether you're just starting out or you want to scale to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. So welcome my brother, Andrew Lay. He's the CEO of Hierographx, and it's a full service website design company. And he's really empowering people to take that design and making it more effective. Welcome to the show. And it's early in Michigan today.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I'm with you up at 6 a.m. here for this. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so my pleasure. We have to mention, though, that today is a special day for you. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yes, again, happy to be here for this. And I really love what I do, solving problems, helping businesses succeed. Just absolutely happy to be in the office on my birthday.
Yeah. You're a brave man to work on your birthday. I know some people like to take their day off, but if you love what you do, it's not really work, is it?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Words to live by.
Yeah. I love the name of your company, Hierographx, which is like hieroglyphics in ancient Egypt. But what inspired you to start that? And tell us a little bit about that and how you got into this business.
Sure. And our origin story has a bit to do with the name of the company as well. So we actually started back in 2017. We were developing our own apps. We had some great ideas that we were pursuing, trying to build the unicorn idea, so to speak. And we were entirely investor funded at that point. And so I was holding regular investor dinners where we would be raising money to continue pursuing our ideas. Around 2020, that got a little difficult with all the restaurants closed. I had a hard time holding these investor dinners. And at the same time, there was an increase in demand for digital services. Up to that point, I had people ask me if I could build their website or build their app. And it was always, we just focus on building our own. But at that point, I thought it was a good opportunity to pivot. And that may have been the best decision that we made, simply because I'm incredibly competitive. I've got a great team that are very competitive. And our goal was then, now we're in the marketplace with a bunch of other agencies, is how do we become the best? And by being the best, it's more based around the mantra of your success is our success. So it's more than just developing good design. It's actually creating effective websites. So in the relation back to, you got it right, from the hieroglyphics to hierographix. We were taking a modern spin on that because part of one of our app ideas we were working on was centered around emojis and avatars. And we had a discussion about, is language evolving or devolving? Because we started with these pictographs and came to words, and now I think pretty much anyone would agree that sometimes an emoji replaces what you could say in an entire sentence just by putting an emoji there. We thought it interesting seeing both as language evolving or devolving, and then came up with that hierographix, and that name has just stuck since then.
Yeah, I love it. I've always been interested in ancient Egypt. Have you ever been there or thought
No,
about going there?
definitely on my bucket list. I would definitely
Yeah,
love to go there. I have not,
yeah.
though.
I have not either, but I remember reading and go. Actually, I saw the movie Chariots of the Gods. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I haven't seen it.
Basically, a NASA engineer looked at ancient hieroglyphics, not graphics, and he deduced that the book of in the Bible, the book of Ezekiel, was actually a description of space aliens from another planet coming, and they were in the form of these seraphim and angels and things like that. And it was really interesting, and I was very interested in that kind of thing when I was younger. So I remember going to that movie, and all my friends were going, "Oh, Paul, are you kidding?" But no, it was very interesting. I just really love the topic. So, what are some of the early lessons that you learned about speed, trust, and conversion that still guide you today?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we get into that not a lot of other agencies get into is called X research or user experience research. And
Hmm.
with that, we go beyond just, say, interviewing customers. We actually try to recruit prospect customers or people that are within the demographic that you're targeting that you don't know and we don't know, because that gets you the most unbiased feedback. As you may
Hmm.
know, that I know you're a drummer and I'm a drummer as well. And when you share music or something creative with someone, they have a hard time critiquing or giving negative feedback. But the negative
Yeah.
feedback is actually the most important part to be able to improve. What we've found, or what's found across industries, is when a user has a negative experience, 90% of them won't come back. You lost your conversion, you've created a distrust of your brand, you've completely lost them. So the ability to not just, and it's not just messaging, because messaging is a big part of this, but it's also the design. It's how fast does your website load? There's so many aspects to this user experience to ensure that people have a good experience, or the lack of a negative experience to increase the chance of conversion. So a lot of early on user research led us to gain some understandings. And some of these understandings are very specific to an industry or very specific to a demographic. But
Mm.
there's a lot of these insights that we gain that work across all industries. And I'll give a quick example. One of them is called the rule of three. And the rule of three works in so many ways, such as one example would be, if you have steps for someone to sign up for your service or your program, if you say, hey, look, it's just four easy steps, there's actually distrust in the user's mind because, four
Mm.
sounds complicated. I don't know. But if you say instead, if you could combine two of those into one and you make it three steps, you can say just three steps. And most people say easy in their mind. You don't even have to
Yeah.
say just three easy steps. You say just three steps. And because this is another thing that we found out, is conciseness of messaging is really important. There's a mantra that
Mm.
we pretty much live by when we're creating messaging, especially for home pages or landing pages, is that people don't read anymore, they skim. It takes the average user about 5 to 8 seconds to know whether they're going to stay on your page and research more or whether they're going to move on. And I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to if they think about it, is when you're researching a product or service that you want to buy, you'll commonly go to Google, you'll type in a query, and you're going to see a bunch of results, and you click a bunch of them open in a new tab. And it's like, how long do you spend on each one of those before you make a decision, close that tab, move on to the next one? And this is where a lot of people make mistakes in creating big, large blocks of text on that homepage and landing page. It's not that you can't have explanations or for people to dive deeper, but your headlines need to say it all, because when they scroll up and down, they're going way too quickly to be able to read all those details. So the headlines need to say it all. Your call to actions need to be clear. And just to dig into another mistake that's very commonly made, we'll get clients come to us and they'll request they want a homepage slider because we have these. And again, this is even in three, where three won't work, is we have these three important things that we want a homepage slider. So it's going to shift and give this other message, and it's going to shift and give this other message. Homepage sliders in the hero section reduce conversion rates by 90% across industries. They get an average of about 1% conversion rate, and about 89% of those are clicking on the first slide. They don't make it past the first slide. There's the rule of three doesn't work everywhere. There's a lot of things, a lot of do's and don'ts. And here's another place of the rule of three that really works. If you can summarize your brand benefit or value in three main points as they're scrolling down your homepage, this is much more effective for a message that sticks. So one of the things that we do when we're testing, we test your homepage, we test your competitor's homepage, and then when we're done and we get to the bottom of it, and they get to scroll because the most important part of this and what we call qualitative testing is the follow-up questions. Even if we see them stop and pause and maybe circle their mouse, we have to ask questions. Hey, what are you thinking right now? And then when they
Mm.
tell us something and then we want to ask a follow-up question, this is where we get the most valuable data. But the point is, when we get to the bottom of that page, we close the browser and then we ask them, now tell us what you remember about this brand. And the really interesting thing is if you've summarized your main points in three benefits, three values, a high percentage of them will retain that and be able to tell you all three. Once you break three, the percentage that can't tell you anything shoots dramatically up. And so there's something about that power of three that makes it easy for people. They actually more easily remember what about your brand makes you special or what your value proposition is. So that rule of three is really important that we find.
Yeah, I love that. Scientific. So let's step back just for a second. The purpose of a website is to turn a visitor into a what?
A conversion. Any type of
Right.
landing page is a conversion. Now, a conversion, if we're talking a B2C, could be a sale. You could have an
Mhm.
e-commerce website, and that conversion is actually them putting something in the cart and checking out.
Yeah.
But commonly, there's steps of conversions before that, and especially in B2B. In B2B,
Yeah.
we don't actually sell them that way. The conversion is either they hit the phone call button on your site so that they're calling you directly. They filled out the web form because they're interested in getting more. And so it's not actually your customer acquisition cost. It's more like your lead acquisition cost. And then
Yeah.
your close ratio after that helps you determine what the customer acquisition cost is.
And good. Thank you for doing that, for explaining that. One question that I always want to know, especially because of once there is a conversion, what happens next? So do you notice any gaps in how small businesses respond to leads that come in through an inquiry or a thing like that? Obviously, if you get a phone call, if you're closed, there's got to be a response. But if you're not closed, or if you're a 24/7 kind of company, what happens next? And do you notice any gaps in that response time?
Yes, absolutely. And see, so with what we do, back to that mantra, your success is our success, we do
Mhm.
more than build websites. We advise people on operations because just if we run a marketing strategy and drive traffic to your website, if your website can't convert, then you're not going to be happy with the marketing sent there. And likewise, to this question that you're asking, the faster you follow up on that lead, the greater your chance of closing them is. So the longer you wait to respond, it continually reduces the chance that you're going to convert them into a customer. So I would say that's one of the biggest impacts by your behavior when you get a lead that impacts your ability to close.
Yeah, in fact, within 5 minutes, if you don't respond in some way within 5 minutes, your likelihood of connecting with that prospect goes down 21 times. And within 30 minutes, it goes down like 400%. It's incredibly crazy about how demanding our attention is these days. And so you advise, and this is where I come in and where I work with clients is to respond quickly and use automation, but also use escalation so that humans can take over as soon as there's a prioritization process about how you should follow up with your new inquiry and turn that hopefully into a customer or some sort of relationship. There's little micro conversions that happen along the way, but that's a different topic, but it's related for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And here at our agency, we normally have about four different people that are monitoring the incoming forms, whether they're going to just generate a copy and pasted template as a response to get them to set up a meeting, or whether it requires escalation of a more senior person to respond. But you're absolutely right. Those stats were great that you just said, that shows the impact of waiting too long and how much that can reduce your effectiveness at gaining new sales.
Yeah. So, what do you think small businesses misunderstand about their website's role in their success?
I think if I was to say one thing is that everything is online nowadays, and this is the front door, the facade of your business. You might have a brick and mortar store, but they're unlikely to see that before they see your website. And so they're judging you off of your website. And that goes from everything from your branding to your tone to the messaging to the design, just even talking about branding. To us, there's so much more to branding than just a logo. Even though the logo is very important, it's the foundation of design. It's what we design everything around. We frame it through that. But there's a lot more. There's one thing that we do before we do a custom design is we want to find out your brand differentiator. What exactly makes you different from your competitors? That brand differentiator combined with understanding your target audience, and one common mistake of small businesses is that they think they can target everybody, and it's no,
Mhm.
it's we need to narrow that down for who best resonates with your brand. And so if we understand your brand differentiators, your target audience, now we can develop what your tone and your messaging should be to be able to best resonate with them. But yeah, I'm going a little bit deep there, but the main thing is understanding how important your website actually is.
Yeah. And also, I think a confused buyer doesn't buy. A confused buyer or a confused visitor doesn't convert. So, do you find that websites often fail to guide visitors toward a clear next step?
That's very,
About
very
steps.
common.
Yeah, we talked about steps a little bit earlier. How does that affect the effectiveness of bounce rates and things like that? People don't stay very long, like you said earlier. They'll decide right away. If you don't tell them what's next, they're
So
gonna you're gonna lose them.
absolutely. And one of the things that we focus on first is what we call the hero section of a website. And the hero section of a website, a lot of people are unfamiliar with that term. So we call that,
Mhm.
it's the top fold of your homepage. It's the first thing that loads. It's the first thing that they see. And one huge mistake is putting too much information in there. It causes confusion. Confusion is a negative experience. Now you just hit that 90% drop off rate because you confuse them
Yeah.
right off the bat. And so when
Mhm.
we focus on a hero section, it's the three C's. It's got to be clear, it should be concise, and it should be convincing. And so if you're missing the element of one of those three, you're losing the effectiveness of the messaging as soon as they open your homepage. Now, we do like to, while we say convincing, it's absolutely okay for it to be a bold statement that really empowers or leverages your brand differentiator is very effective. But in order for it to be convincing, you should immediately be following it by social proof. Social
Uh-huh.
proof, whether it's a testimonial, whether it's awards you've won, whether it's you're getting written up by different media organizations. Because what happens with that bold statement, the bold statement isn't always convincing on its own, but there's a psychological impact when you go from the bold statement into look at all these other people that this has worked for. And now suddenly that bold statement is more believable.
Yeah, you can write 1,000 words about how great you are, but only a few hundred or just a few words from someone who's actually experienced your service makes a huge difference.
Yes, that
Huge
goes a
difference.
long way. Absolutely.
Yes. You mentioned load time a little earlier, but how does a slow or unclear website hurt the follow-up and response efforts?
Oh, so this is actually, it overlaps into different areas, and especially if you're in B2C, but you'd be surprised in B2B how many people load your website on a mobile phone.
Mhm.
I've seen this experience being in a boardroom before pitching a product or service, and we get about 30 seconds into the pitch, and the CEO's pulling up your website right on his mobile phone. And the for it to be able to load quickly, I forget the stat offhand, but if it takes more than 2 seconds to load, you'll have about a 50% drop off rate right there if it doesn't fully load. And the important thing on the mobile aspect of that is they might be on a mobile network, not on Wi-Fi. So it's really important that you have the technology so that you're not loading huge pictures in the hero section, that it's got an alternate image used for mobile. And so I don't want to get too much into the technical here, but it is
Mhm.
absolutely important how quick your website loads. That we call it friction. So
Yeah.
anytime there's friction, that's also a interference with the conversion. And your first point of friction, as soon as they've clicked on your link or they've typed in your domain name, is how quick your website loads. And yeah, it's extremely important. It's one of the more technical sides of this conversation about conversions, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't be understated how important that is.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there who use Wix and things like that, different website builders or technologies, full stack kind of things that hopefully the people behind it are taking care of a lot of those things. But some of it's left up to you. If you're loading and having a 10-minute video in your hero section, that's going to dramatically affect the load time of your website, even though the
Yes.
technology behind it is basically sound and everything should work fine. But if you're loading a picture that's 7 feet by 10 feet and you squish it down so it fits in this little box, there's some things that you can do to really hurt it, even though the person or the site that you're using might be a mobile responsive and all those things are in place. You can still break it and still
Yes.
not make it
Yes.
still intact.
There, and there's a couple things we do. First of all, when a client wants a video in their hero section, we generally try to discourage that. There's a
Mhm.
few reasons for that. One of the main ones is no one watches the video. There's such a low percentage of people that will get further than to 2 seconds in that video, even if it loads really fast. So one of the things that we'll do is if it is a video, we want to combine it with messaging that stays there. So at least they get the messaging. But I've had
Mhm.
clients that really insisted on a video in their homepage, and then they come back confused when they talk to a client to say, I don't understand why they didn't understand this. 8 seconds into the video on the hero, it shows this. Why wouldn't they understand it? And then when you explain to them again about why we cautioned you against that, it's, oh, that makes sense. And one of the things that we do, if you do a hero video, is we actually put what's called a placeholder image. That's a low bandwidth image that can load really fast for those users that aren't going to stay there 2 seconds, because your video probably won't play in 2 seconds, especially if you're on a mobile network. And so that way it's like an alternate hero section we're presenting to them that still makes sense. And so that's some of what we do there. And there are some hero sections we've done that were high converting that have a video in it. But one way we've done that is we make half of the hero with the messaging and kind of overlay that and fade that into the video on the other side. And again, you're
Uh-huh.
going back to standard principles of the hero, and hopefully that message will cause them to stay in the hero a little bit longer. But usually that should be a call to action for, hey, come watch the full video because we're giving a presentation that's really important here.
Yeah, gotcha. So and I like to have actionable strategies. Obviously, we're both in the implementation and we're both drummers. So we want to know how to get quickly from A to B or A to Z with our rhythms or with our how we express. So if someone just wanted to have one thing to fix on their website to improve conversions, what should that be?
And we do a lot of website audits. And so it's hard to just say that without
Yeah.
seeing what they've done on their website. But yeah, one of the biggest common mistakes we see is lack of conciseness and clarity in the hero section. Another one would be your customer left this really long, great testimonial, but it's 2 paragraphs long, and you place that whole thing on there. And there were some really amazing things they said in there, but the problem is none of your first time visitors are actually going to read that whole thing. If you can take the best highlight, the strongest sentence out of there, and just quote that, the percentage of people that will read that is going to shoot through the roof from like close to a 0% up to a 75, 80% when you shorten it to just one small short statement.
Yeah, and you could give it a headline, or if you're not really good at writing, you can use AI to take that testimonial and say, give me the bullet points from this 6 paragraphs. What are the most important things that my visitor, who's this, would resonate with them? So there's lots of things. Speaking of AI, are there any things that you can use? People are using AI in all kinds of good ways and all kinds of bad ways these days. How can AI help using generative AI is what I'm talking about. How can that help with conversions on your website?
Oh, that's a great question. And a lot of it is if people aren't used to using large language models, one of the greatest prompt starters are to tell it to act as a specific expert. So you can tell it to
Hmm.
act as a copywriter who specializes in conversion, and you will see it try to emulate some of the things that we've been talking about in this interview.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that I would say about AI, and we encourage all of our clients to use AI, whether they're writing blog articles or social media posts, and AI is great, but AI also makes mistakes. So you have to be very cautious of that. Google also, where they can recognize that it's entirely AI, that it actually reduces your chance of ranking high on that. So going through with a manual edit, making sure that it, adheres to factual things within your
Hmm.
industry or product or service is actually incredibly important. We find very regularly AI does a thing that we call hallucinates, and this just has to do with the technology of how the large language models work is it has consumed so much literature from so many places. It doesn't really have an understanding as of yet of how to differentiate what is right and wrong. Ultimately, the technology boils down to predictive text. So just there's a funny thing that went around a few years back where people would play jokes on their friends just by text messaging, but just hitting the middle button for the predictive word, and it pumps out this nonsense sentence that it makes sense from a sentence structure, but it's just a totally crazy thing to say. So it's like that, but it's taking these models of all of these high level literature that it's read. So it's much more likely to create and print out exactly what you want. And then, of course, they've combined it with logic to make it much more effective than predictive text, I'm sorry. But if you just keep in mind that it is still predictive text at its heart, so to speak, is that there's so
Hmm.
many areas where it can just pump out nonsense. And here's a quick idea example of how that actually worked for me one time. When I was first messing with ChatGPT, when it really got popular there and we started implementing it into different processes, we didn't understand the likelihood for it to have these hallucinations. And so I actually had it write an executive summary for one of my friends. He wanted to build an incredibly cool app that would help a lot of people. And we knew that it would help people just from our understanding of different research that was out there. So I had the AI write the executive summary, but source the different research to prove its effectiveness. And it
Hmm.
pumped out this beautiful executive summary, and it sourced all these different researches, and it quoted them down below and sourced them all beautifully to the structure it should be. I sent that out to the group of people that were working on this app. And then a few days later, I decided, oh, let me go and link these research papers in so that this will be
Yeah.
a little bit more effective. And what I found out is while it was looked like it was perfectly sourced, these authors, these research paper titles, they were all made up. It was the proper structure because it understood how to structure that. Now, since then,
Yeah.
they've come a little bit further and there's different models where you can truly source the research. And what's happening is as they're upgrading AI, they're laying new layers of logic on there so that it can be more effective and source things correctly. But yes, if you're not using AI, and I'll just end my little spiel with saying this, because I was in talking to the Saginaw Career Complex, to the entrepreneur students in there, is there's a lot of fear mongering going on that says that the future belongs to AI. The future does not belong to AI. It belongs to
No.
the people who know how to harness and use AI. So it's
Just
not
like
that.
computers or anything else. Yeah.
Yes,
It's a tool.
absolutely. Absolutely. So my belief is it's going to eliminate a bunch of coders' jobs. It's rather going to explode the amount of software being produced. There's a lot more specialized software and it's going to change the economy. But it's just like going from libraries to the internet. That didn't create a big lapse of joblessness. It exploded into new concepts and new opportunities and ideas that could be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use AI every day. I use it lots of different ways, but I do source a lot of material. If I want to learn something, for instance, or if I want to write about a certain topic, I will go out and find thought leaders in that space and sources that I trust, like HubSpot and other places, like when I write about conversions or messaging, I'll go and pick some sources that I know are trustworthy and that they've really done the work. And I'll take some of their works and load that into ChatGPT to help to source it myself. And then say, okay, what does this mean? What does it mean for my audience? What does it mean for whatever that is, whatever the topic I'm working on? So there's ways that you can get around that
Yes.
hallucination stuff. But yeah, I found the same things with citing things. I was writing a book, and it was citing. I told it to cite the the sources that it found, and I knew of the sources. And when I went to click on the links, and the links were not leading to what it says it was going to go.
Yeah.
And I went, oh,
Right.
okay, I got to do some of my own research to really to fine tune this. So beware. But yeah, you got if you want to win, if you want to win fast, AI is a great tool, but you got to be smart about using it. That's for
Absolutely.
so. So you mentioned this process of evaluating a website's design and messaging. What do you look for first? And I think we talked a little bit about that, the loading time and that kind of thing. We got as far as the hero section.
Yeah, when we start a new website, like I said, we start with the brand, we start with the logo. Even the logo, the importance of a logo can't be understated. When over half of the people won't associate with your brand if they think the logo is odd, outdated, or unappealing, it tells you the logo is very important. And what makes a modern logo? One of the common mistakes in a logo is overcomplicating, making it too complex. A good logo should be able to be reduced to one or two colors. A good logo you should be able to distinct it whether it's small or large. And these things have a huge impact on all of the design and messaging is going to be based on that foundation. So a lot of times we're looking at the brand right away and how the brand represents that. It's common to have a good icon with a logo. That icon should be representative of the benefit or value of the brand or even the differentiator that you provide. And then from there, yeah, the hero section is super important, not overcomplicating things. So a good homepage, you don't want to explain everything on the homepage. You're going to have different services, different products in different parts of your website. And the idea is to put the most important things on the website and lead them into more details. So having good call to actions are very important to get people clicking around. The more that you get them clicking around, the more likely that they're sticking, and it increases the chance that they're going to convert.
Yeah, and that clicking around, those are conversions. Those are micro conversions that you want people to engage in what you have so that they begin to trust you, so that there's some value. They're getting some value from being at your website. And that's how you keep them that's how you get them to stay longer, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. In that example of the B2C with the e-commerce website, those micro conversions are you clicked from the home page to a product page, and maybe you went through the store to the category to the product page. And then once you're on the product page, now your next conversion is adding it to your cart. And after that, the next conversion is actually clicking the shopping cart. And then from there, it's actually clicking the checkout, then filling in your payment information, and then completing the order. One common thing that when we have customers that come to us is if we've set up all our analytics correctly, then you're going to know exactly where your biggest challenge point is. So if you
Mhm.
have a high percentage of people adding the product to the cart, and then you have a high percentage of people clicking the cart itself, and then at the next step, it falls off significantly. That's actually a good point where, sure, we could come in, we could analyze it, we could provide our hypothesis of what is wrong with that because we have enough experience to understand what converts well in e-commerce. But a lot of times, the very best thing you could do is actually a little bit of UX research to solve that problem. And commonly, there's some messaging, there's some way that you've arranged the form, there's something abnormal about that's triggering some type of let's say the opposite of a trust signal, a distrust signal that's
Mhm.
causing people to fall off. And just correcting, sometimes it's just one small thing to correct and it dramatically improves that conversion rate or that micro conversion. And now you're suddenly making more money.
I'm glad that you mentioned trust signals. Are there some that you consider non-negotiable? And before you answer that, many of my in my audience are not in the e-commerce space. They're in the the service business, or they're providing health services or healing services, or they're coaches or authors. So that whole complexity isn't part, but some of them do sell books. And so there's a little bit of that. Are there trust signals that you consider that are non-negotiable?
Yes, absolutely. Back to the hero section of clear, concise, and convincing. If you violate those, that affects the trust signal. It's hard to say any negative experience because we've talked about a few of those negative experiences. And I guess some of the people that are newer into what they're doing, it's, well, we haven't won any awards. We haven't had any
Yeah.
media organizations write us up. This is where it's really important to have these short statements from customers that affect one thing. So if you just had a bold statement about how powerful your wellness program is for X type of condition, the very next thing you want to do is have a really short statement of a testimonial that's very specific to that condition, that they tremendous, it's like a whole new world how they helped me with this condition. And that's really important, that you follow a social proof with the bold statement that you're making. And as one other thing that I would say there is back to the brand differentiator. What you don't want to do is when you don't want to sound or look like everyone else. Because back to the common practice that people do is they open a bunch of windows in their research. And if you sound and look like everyone else, why are they going to choose you? That it just looks like you're sounding and looking like everyone else. So standing out from the crowd, showing that you're different, and then proving why that's effective with social proof is actually a really important trust signal.
Yeah, got it. So how do you balance that creativity and conversion? We've talked a lot about different aspects. We've spent a lot of time on the hero section, which is obviously a very important part of your homepage. How do you balance that creativity and design with the conversion?
That's a great question, because the common thing for designers and even developers is I want to add all this pizzazz. I want to make this to be the best, most creative, amazing design that I've made. But what we found is that can be very distracting from the messaging itself. And so actually to be able to look at the design and see every design element, and knowing that design element enhances your message and doesn't detract from your message or distract from your message, that's actually really important. Simplicity is actually a really good goal, unless your brand is, it depends on the style or the brand that we're speaking through is, but very commonly, simple is best here.
Yeah. And how do you choose between visual design and speed to impact? I call it speed to impact because there needs to be a value exchange for the people to start, for a visitor to start to trust your brand. So how do we choose between the detractors that maybe, like you said, there can be distraction? How do you choose between that design, visual design, and speed to impact?
That's a good question. The speed to impact with the messaging is priority one. If the other aspect of what we call delighters is really the cherry on top. So when your mouse goes over a button and we do a quick little animation with that button, for one thing, it should be framed through that brand differentiator, through your branding. But all these delighters, these are just the cherry on top. The messaging is first and foremost the most important thing. All of the design elements should support that, and anything specials, animations, and so forth, those are just delighters. They should add to it. They shouldn't distract or take away. It should, so to speak, enhance the experience that the user is having.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. You're clearly very passionate about what you do and very knowledgeable. Why is that such a big driver for you? What was it that really made you dig in like you have?
I guess I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship ever since I was a kid. And every job that I had, I was breaking down the business model, their marketing funnel, how they did what they did, where the weaknesses were, and how these different models differentiate from each other across different industries or sectors. And I know I sound like a little bit of a geek in this part, but I love bylaws and operating agreements and how legal structures are of the different businesses are set up and why they're set up that way. I I think I might be a little bit of a rare breed that loves it like that, but it also allows a benefit to our clients that I can break down and understand what model they're in, how far they've progressed in that model, what their biggest roadblocks or hurdles are right now, so that it can prioritize as, listen, you have X budget here. So the best things that you can do for the biggest improvements would be here, one, two, and three. It's just been a passion of mine. I love reading business books. I love seeing new breakdowns of businesses. And yeah, just one of those rare breeds that if I get a bylaws or operating agreement, I'm reading the whole thing to understand how they operate, if they do things differently than others.
Interesting. So, what's something that small business owners need to hear today? And maybe we can tie this into, as we wrap up with your final words, what are three things that small business owners need to hear today about believing in their own ability to convert leads and put these ideas into action?
Yeah, absolutely. For one thing, if you've created a product or service, you already have some type of, and maybe it's a little bit more emotionally based at first, but some type of belief that you have something special. And the ability to communicate that with the outside world by following certain principles so that you can gain more leads is really important. And just, I guess, remembering that your website is your virtual front door, or actually even salesperson, generating leads 24/7, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so
Mhm.
the the importance of seeing that as an investment so that you can get a good return on your investment, and the importance of that, the website in general, and what its ability to help leverage your success or potentially detract and take away from your progress. Knowing and understanding that, putting more time into your website. And by the way, one of the things that we offer is a free website audit. So if you wanted to speak with us and have a quick website audit so that we could assess that, that's something that we offer to give you pointers. And just like I'm giving in this interview here, is giving you
Mhm.
takeaways that you can actually work on, that you can actually improve yourself, is one of our goals. Because this is, like you had pointed out, a passionate topic for me, or a
Mhm.
topic that I'm passionate about. Is I
Yeah.
can speak for hours and hours on different aspects of this. And so there's always more where that came from. There's always new areas to improve. And I think you made a comment about the cobbler's shoes before our show. Is
Yeah.
we look at our own website and see all these areas that we need to improve still, and some different
Yeah.
deficiencies. And sometimes you don't realize they're deficiencies until after they're up and after you've gotten a little bit of feedback or analyzed it long enough, and you realize, oh, wow, I need to improve that aspect or this aspect. Continuous improvement is a really important aspect of how you frame or look at your website as well.
Yeah, and it's a concept that I teach my clients in my mastermind and whatnot is called the power of incremental action. And you hit it right on the nose there, continuous improvement. You don't have to do everything perfectly out of the gate. It's a journey rather than at a destination. And so you've got to prioritize and hopefully work on the things that are most important that are going to get you the results that you want as quickly as you can. And it's a powerful way. By the way, you can get in touch with Andrew with a 30-minute audit of your web page. You can talk about some of these topics. You can go to www.hieroart.com. It's HIERO art.com. Correct?
Yes, yes, that's
Yeah. Okay.
correct.
All right. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure. I love this topic. I love the passion that you have. It's in this, the geekdom behind it all is, for me, I live and breathe that kind of stuff because I have an IT background, and drummers are also very detail oriented because we have to be. We got to stick to the tempo and serve the music. And I think that's what you're doing. One thing that I forgot to ask you, and I had a client say to me, I hate my website. He hates his website because he has hosting issues and things like that. And says, if I could just throw it away and just use social media, I get all my business from social media, is what he says. And I said, yeah, your website is your presence. You don't own that presence that's on the other social media platforms. You don't own that platform. You don't own those visitors and things. Can you just give us a little nugget on that? Why people
Yeah,
should have
absolutely.
should have a website? Absolutely. And social media is a traffic driver for your website.
Yet they're actually both really important. And when someone says something like that, tells me that you have likely an ineffective website and you're missing a
Right.
great opportunity to gain more traffic and gain more customers by not having it set up correctly. And just to top on what you said earlier, I don't know if you're familiar with the Kaizen philosophy, but the
Hmm.
Kaizen philosophy of continuous improvement is just improving 1% at a time and just these little edges. And, how you can actually dominate competitors isn't by being 100% better than them at this, but actually just 1% better at 100 different things will make you dramatically stand out from the crowd. And so just
Right.
if you as a person improve by 1% daily, a year later, you're a totally changed person. And you can apply that to your website. As you see the website and you see something you don't like and that's wrong, and you can just make it a little bit better and keep analyzing it and making it a little bit better. And that's one common misconception that I would add that a lot of small businesses have is I built my website, I have it, it's done. It should never be done. It should
It's
be a
not done yet.
continuous improvement. You should try to analyze and look at your analytics and see where people are falling off and seeing where the problem is so that you understand where you need to improve so it can help bring you greater success.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That really wraps us up nicely. And so my friend who complained about it, he's now a client and we're working through some of those things. And he actually serves three different segments and they all are locked into one thing. And so he needs to have more service pages and things like that direct but he should really look at who's coming to his website and who he really wants to attract the most. And I know who that is. And from there, there are other branches that we can take other visitors. We can direct people to different places if you're this person. So a lot of people have that kind of problem where they serve multiple audiences, but they're related in some way because of the thing that he teaches. But anyway, we're out of time, but thank you so much again, Andrew. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad that we finally connected. We're both in Michigan and it's early and there's time to move on to our next adventure of the day. Remember, as we sign off, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal till the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon, your host, and Andrew Lay. Thank you very much, brother, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.